It's Mira Business FM. It's the morning drive with me, Tim Elliott. Good morning, and we are going to be talking legal matters in a moment for startups. Particularly, that's where we're going to go. Just a reminder, you can find us at mirabusiness.fm. That's the website. You might be watching, listening there now. Could be with us on YouTube, could be with us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on whichever social platform is your platform of choice. Thank you for joining us there. You can find us, info@mira.fm, and also it's very simple to find us on WhatsApp, whatsapp.mira.fm. Just put that into your browser. If WhatsApp is installed, it will bring up the box. Get in touch and give us a like if you can. It's always appreciated. Now, legal stuff for startups. To be honest, absolutely essential legal blueprints for startups in the evolving regulatory framework for digital assets in the UAE particularly. Raymond Kisswany is a partner at Davidson Co. He's the head of the firm's international trade, digital assets and startups practices. Raymond, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
It's very good to have you here. We were talking off air there just briefly about your background, and I mentioned the speed of legal changes, how everything, you pointed out, it was really around COVID that things started to change. But I do think it always amazes me in this country how much is going on from a legal perspective that I guess lots of us don't really understand. I did a legal podcast for a long time, and I'm kind of aware of the changes in legal, in regulations, in some of the laws, in many of the laws. It was very hard to keep up. And the person I did the podcast with, Ludmilla, who's a guest here as well, was always kind of, it's so exciting to be a lawyer at the moment. And I can see from you, the smile there, that it's kind of the same. There's so much going on.
I couldn't have said it better, and I couldn't agree more. I've been in Dubai now for coming up to 12 years.
Right.
I started off my career in New York, and there's a real interesting kind of stagnation that occurs in New York and in London. Things are dated, everything is the same almost. Whereas you come here and it's called an emerging market, but you certainly get to see things happening, things changing. It's rare for a lawyer in New York or in London to be sitting and seeing laws being drafted and how they are being drafted and how they're being enacted. Yeah. Whereas, I remember being a fairly sort of mid-level associate seeing white papers on how the new bankruptcy law was going to be drafted a few years back. So it's really, really interesting. And I think one of the huge drivers that occurs here in comparison is whether it's the government, whether it's regulators, there is an interaction, a deep interaction between the regulator and the and lawyers and professionals and business people on how you can make the law work for the people rather than the other way around.
No, I do agree with you. I think it's an opportunity, I guess, for you in whatever position you hold, however high up the legal food chain you are, but you can be a part of these changes as well.
100%.
I guess it must be really exciting. Look, we've got lots and lots to talk about today, legally as well as from the standpoint of discipline that you've learned from your Ironman journey. I want to come to that a little bit later, and there is a reason why I want to come to that. But I wanted to start with you with legal blueprints for UAE startups, and really to structure this so that I can keep track of what you're going to say, because my understanding is not at your level. But I wanted to start with licensing versus structure, because a founder has a great idea and is ready to get started, but you need to begin operations in the right order. Should you focus on getting the right trade license first, or should you focus on finalizing the legal structure, the shareholder agreement? Where do things begin? Or is that a chicken and egg question? I'm not quite sure.
I think without exaggeration, that is probably one of the most important questions, and it's great to start off there because the UAE is a very unique jurisdiction in comparison to virtually all other jurisdictions. Unlike the vast majority of countries where you simply register a company with one national registry, so if you're in the UK, the company house, etc.
Yeah.
Here we're dealing with multiple layers. We have 7 emirates. Each one is a separate legal jurisdiction with its own DED and its own licensing regimes. There are countless free zones with their own corporate and commercial rules and regulations. And on top of that, we have 2 financial free zones, the IFC and ADGM, which have their own company law, their own court system. So when founders rush to get a license first, they often end up choosing the wrong jurisdiction or the wrong activity or the wrong corporate structure or all 3, right? And fixing that at a later point is very expensive and very disruptive to your business. So the first step shouldn't be just running and getting a trade license just to have a company. The first step really is understanding the business model, I think. It really requires a deep conversation with a lawyer that is not only versed with the law, but also understanding your business plan and then structuring the entity correctly from there. So what I would say is a good order of the way to go is understand the business. What are you building? Who are your clients, your customers? Is it a regulated business? Where are you going to be operating, etc.? And then based on that, you decide the legal structure and the governance, decision-making, exit rights, and document that properly through agreements. And then you choose the right jurisdiction because you have that choice here, unlike many other countries. You choose the right jurisdiction. Is it mainland? Is it free zone? Is it DIFC, etc.? And so once you have the corporate structure, once you have the jurisdiction in place, all the other things fall into place very smoothly.
Okay, so let's talk about co-founder protection. I mean, very often businesses are ideas with a group of friends, and friendship is fine, but protection is key. For founders starting a business with partners, what's non-negotiable in terms of clauses that should be in a founders or a shareholder agreement, so that down the line you can try to hopefully prevent, but certainly mitigate internal disputes from getting in the way of business?
Yeah, it's really interesting. In my line of work, I've seen more companies fail due to disputes among partners, among founders,
I'm not
rather
surprised.
than the actual market failure. Because you've got a great business plan, you have all these things together, but when you haven't discussed how things can go wrong, when you haven't properly documented that, that's really where things go really wrong. So I would say, the non-negotiables is thinking about vesting. Equity shouldn't be earned. Your equity should be earned over time, not just handed over on day one. Because if a partner walks away soon, you could be stuck with effectively a 50% ghost partner, right?
Sure.
And the second thing I would say is thinking about decision-making and deadlock positions. You need clarity on who's deciding what. When do you require unanimous decisions? When do you require majority decisions? And what happens in the event of a deadlock? Because there's going to be business decisions that are going to be made every day, small or big. And what do you do in the case that there's a disagreement?
Okay.
And then lastly, I would say restrictions and commitment, things like non-competes, confidentiality, IP assignments. You'd be really surprised about how many partners forget to transfer the IP over to the company that they start. And if you have a falling out and you don't have that IP protection, a partner can literally go and set up right next door doing the exact same thing. So those are very, very basic things to get correct right off the bat.
Well, I wanted to ask you about intellectual property IP, because it's that phrase. It's kind of a scary phrase in lots of ways, but it's the genesis of everything, I think. So when should a startup prioritize registering intellectual property? I don't know, a patent or a trademark, and what's the what kinds of mistakes do founders make when it comes to, protecting that core idea?
It's really interesting. I feel like IP and wills, people treat them like they're luxuries when they're really not.
Okay.
Um, they, it's often sort of felt that IP and it's only for the big companies with major software, etc. That's the way that we think about it. Similarly to how we think about wills, that I'm not rich. What do I need a will for, right? But they truly aren't luxuries, and they should be one of your first steps, because trademark protection, you should have that before you publicly launch,
Yep.
raise funding, even before you start sharing things like Dex wildly. The biggest mistake that founders make is assuming that simply, quote unquote, using a brand gives them ownership. It doesn't, and someone can literally register the same trademark tomorrow, and you lose your right to own your own name.
Mm.
So register early, register in the UAE, register in the key international markets that you're operating in. And especially for tech companies, especially, you need to really think about your code, your trade secrets, algorithms, and make sure that they're contractually assigned to the company, not sitting with a freelancer.
It's so interesting this because there's always the argument, I don't need to register this idea. No, it's fine. Nobody will copy me. And of course, people copy all the time. That's one of the things about us as humans, I think, isn't it? And it literally is. Somebody could register your company's name, do exactly the same thing as you, move next door to you, and there's nothing you can do about that unless you own your name. It really is as simple as that.
It's literally as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah. When it's put as starkly as that, yeah, IP is pretty important. Let's talk about hiring. We're talking really about a blueprint. The really initial stages for startups. For anybody thinking of or considering a business at the moment. But hiring and employment obviously is key. You need the right people. You need the right attitude, particularly in a smaller team for a startup. With the wrong mix of personalities, or can create a toxic environment, which is often far worse than a larger organization. Many startups, I guess, anywhere that you look, but here in the UAE too, rely on early hires or freelance. So what is the essential legal step they need to take to make sure that the company legally owns, we're back to IP again, work created by those first few either contractors or employees?
A very simple step is to have a written IP assignment agreement.
Right.
That's not a WhatsApp message, not a handshake, not just a verbal agreement. That's a properly signed agreement stating that all work that's going to be created by the employee or the freelancer or the contractor belongs to the company. If you don't have that, the default legal position in many jurisdictions, including the UAE, is that the creator of the work, so the employee or the freelancer especially, owns that work. So there's been lots of times where tech companies raise millions, only to discover that the code actually belongs to the developer, the contractor that they've hired,
Right.
and they've only paid him a few thousand dirhams, for example, and that could be very catastrophic. So the golden rule is, if someone touches the product, designs it, uh, does content with it, or codes it, it must be contractually assigned to the company.
Okay, and that's generally the case, unless you have an ironclad agreement there. If you do the work, you own the work.
Basically, yeah, yeah. So the
Ah,
freelancer or the contractor that you've hired to um, develop your code, your logos, all of those things. If you don't have that agreement in place,
yeah.
they're the ones that own the IP of it.
Okay, that's interesting to know. What's the key legal difference between an angel investor agreement and a venture capital term sheet? And what should a founder look out for when they go for their initial
Yeah.
round of funding?
So an angel investor typically wants simplicity and speed. They invest smaller amounts. They rely heavily on trust in the founders and the founders' vision. Their documents tend to be short and sort of founder friendly.
Mm.
Venture capital is very different. These are institutional, they're heavily negotiated, and they'll contain many things like liquidation preferences, anti-dilution protection. They'll have board seats, veto rights, and they'll also want sort of very detailed corporate governance controls. The key thing that founders should really look out for in the early VC rounds is control. Many founders will unintentionally hand over a significant amount of control way too early, and founders really need to understand that every right they are giving away, especially around future funding and valuation and exit.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about mistakes because we all make them. It's what makes us human. Let's look at I don't know if you have a top five there, but let's look at common kind of legal mistakes that startups make. If you had to pick the most common, the most costly early potential legal error, what might that be? And also as well, how would we fix it?
Well, it kind of goes back to the very first question that I said, without exaggeration, was was extremely important. The number one mistake that startups make that ends up being extremely costly is that they launch way too fast without proper setup or proper agreements. They'll start operating, hiring, building, fundraising, etc., sometimes without any proper legal documentations in place.
Right.
They'll run off to a free zone, get themselves a trade license, and think that that's that. And so the fix for that is, before starting to do all of that, make sure that you incorporate correctly all the things that we discussed in the first question. Make sure that you have a proper founders agreement or a shareholders agreement, a partners agreement in place. Have the IP assignment agreement and your confidentiality agreements. What will often happen is that startups obviously need to be very cost conscious, and they will shy away from spending a few thousand dirhams to get these things in place at the outset with a proper legal framework. But when things go wrong, that sort of few thousand dirhams ends up being hundreds of thousands of dirhams, if not complete bankruptcy.
Yeah, painful.
Very painful.
Extremely
Very
painful. Okay, so legal blueprints for UAE startups. That's kind of section one. We're doing well, sticking to the script, I have to say here. But I want to move on to the state of digital asset regulation. We've seen and continue to see real ambition in the Emirates when it comes to, I guess, Web3 digital assets. Now, from a legal standpoint, what are the biggest compliance hurdles companies entering this space, and lots are doing it? What are they facing right now?
So one of the amazing things is that the UAE has been very forward-thinking in this space, where a lot of jurisdictions have shied away or have restricted it. The UAE has been very forward-thinking, very open to it, and have really engaged with law firms, with business on how to allow this business to operate, but in a proper regulated manner. Um, so but these are regulated activities,
Okay.
And there are some challenging hurdles there. There's licensing confusion, I would say, because similar to what we were discussing about the UAE having this unique structure of having different emirates, different free zones, etc., whereas many countries have one financial regulator, here we have several. Um, you know, a lot of founders don't know whether their operations will trigger regulations by VARA or by DFSA or FSRA or SCA, whereas in many other countries you only have one regulator. So that's a huge challenge. The other challenge is AML and KYC requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of your digital and virtual asset companies underestimate how robust the UAE's compliance expectations are. A lot of people are surprised to learn when I tell them that the UAE's AML and KYC requirements are actually stricter than the UK and the EU's. Um, and I think a lot of them, there's also about token classification. Is it a payment token? Is it a security token? Is it a utility token? Because the answer to that will often come back to which regulators you need to be regulated by.
Sure.
And then there's concerns over privacy rules, custody standards, and operational controls. So again, it kind of comes back to companies need to get early legal advice, because those that get that foundation correct, just like a building, if you get the foundation right, then everything else tends to fall in place.
It's so important, isn't it, to get that foundation right, to get that legal advice right. I mean, if you're a startup looking to launch, I don't know, a crypto or a Web3 business, let's take that as an example. We're on in digital territory at the moment. What's the most critical piece of legal advice regarding where you domicile, whether it's, I don't know, mainland or free zone, say DIFC or ADGM? And why is that advice so important?
Yeah, it really comes down to understanding, again, what the business plan is, because understanding that will determine who should regulate you, because each regulator is different, for a different jurisdiction and in a different way. So in the DIFC, the regulator there is the DFSA. Those are ideal for institutional security tokens or asset management focused models. It's very mature, very robust. In the ADGM, it's the FSRA is the regulator. They're extremely strong for exchanges, custody, and brokers. Um, and you also have in Dubai, outside of the DIFC, you have VARA, which is excellent for retail-facing crypto companies. So picking the wrong jurisdiction will trigger the wrong regulator, and can delay your launch by almost 12 months, if not more sometimes.
Okay. Um, let's talk about, the legal environment is a two-way street, isn't it? And I think people, it's often looked on as you're one side or the other. And maybe that's the way the world is these days. I don't know. But it is a two-way street. So how does the environment in the Emirates ensure that both innovation and ensure, that innovation is protected and that investors are protected? Because the one thing that we all know is that when it comes to digital assets, the world is changing. Well, it's certainly changing faster than I can keep up. That much I'll tell you, Raymond. But how would you put the answer to that across?
Yeah, I think that we're certainly seeing that the UAE has managed to find a balance between regulation and business friendliness, where many other countries are still searching for that balance. I mean, the common view is that regulators in other countries are sort of stifling business.
Mm.
What I've seen here is that regulators will sit with industry professionals, will sit with lawyers, and understand the technology, understand the business model, and build frameworks around it to encourage innovation rather than stifling it, while at the same time ensuring investor um, confidence.
Yeah.
And so I think the key pillars that the UAE has will be things like having clear rule books, whether it's the FSA, FSRA, VARA. They have very detailed regulations. They're easily accessible regulators.
Mm.
Licensing pathways, so ensuring that businesses meet the AML and the custody requirements that are required. And there is real enforcement there, where that the investors know that they're safe to invest. So I would say it's a mature and sophisticated jurisdiction, and it's only getting stronger with constant change. Um, so again, the real challenge is understanding your business, understanding the jurisdiction, understanding the regulator, and trying to keep up with how changes are happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's incumbent on you to do so, isn't it, as well? It really is the fact that one of the things about the UAE is we have options to do that. And that I think is so important. If you are coming here to start a business, it's not just you go to this guy, you talk to this guy, and you sign this document. There's a whole host of different options. Um, Number of questions that are coming in. This from social media here. If I could just throw a few of these at you, Raymond, do I really need a local partner, or can I own 100% of my business myself now? The answer is obviously yes, you can.
Yes, you can, and the answer, even before the changes, there are still some sectors for mainland businesses that require a local partner, but those are getting less and less. But it has always been, for example, the case that in free zones you can, as a foreigner, own your business 100%.
Right.
But with the changes that have occurred recently, you can, yes, own your business outright, even in most of mainland.
Yeah. Number of questions here for you. If I want to sell products online from home, what's the simplest and cheapest type of license I need to get? And can I do it without renting an office? Actually, I can answer that, but
Yeah.
I'm going to allow you to answer that because you're the expert.
Well, I mean, there are mainland. I believe it's called an e-commerce or an e-trade license that you can
That's
do.
the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
It's the DED offer that.
Yeah, exactly. They offer that. So you just have to be conscious about how you're going to ship it, insure it, etc. But I mean, that is typically that would be probably the best one. Again, just a small disclaimer: I would need to know a bit more about the business, etc. But yes.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, in general terms, it is possible. That's the one I was thinking about. That's the Dubai Economic Department, the e-trader license, which allows you to do many different things. But as you say, take advice before you jump in. Okay, there's the proviso. I'm an employee, but I want to start a side business, a side hustle. Can I legally run a company in the UAE while still working for my current employer?
Well, that's sort of a it depends question. So legally speaking, there's nothing preventing you per se from being an employee of a company and opening your business, so long as it's always operated. One thing that you would want to check is your employment agreement and whether that will permit you to have a side business, because some companies, especially bigger ones, will have restrictions on you having sort of outside employment or outside businesses.
Okay. So again, read the fine print. That's often legal advice. I've learned that over the years. Look, I think this is the same person. I'm confused about mainland versus free zone, which we've talked about a little bit today. If I choose a free zone, does that mean I can't sell my products to people living in Dubai or Abu Dhabi?
Technically, yes. So when you've set up in a free zone, you are technically licensed to operate within that free zone, whether it's your goods or services are to be provided within that free zone,
Right.
with certain provisos. So technically, yes.
Okay. And the last one, for now at least, if I set up a business today, this is good because record keeping is so important. I have to say, what's the most important legal document I need to keep safe and registered, perhaps, to prove I actually own the company?
Uh, well, in terms of you owning the company, if you are sort of the sole owner, the proof that you own the company is your trade license and your incorporation certificate. So that proves the ownership that you have within the company if you are that.
Okay. But of course, record keeping, pretty important. So
Yeah, 100%.
make sure your filing cabinets are tidy. I think I know your legal offices; they'll be super tidy. I want to ask you. This is kind of really to kind of broaden the discussion. I think I mentioned you are an Iron Man at the beginning of this conversation, and one of the reasons I brought that up, and I didn't tell you why I was going to bring that up, but I kind of realised I think it's the fourth. It's actually not. It's the fifth Iron Man we've had in this studio in the last 7 days. No kidding. So
No.
honestly, and it just seems to be a kind of thing. There must be something in the water. But what is it for you? I know this is a reasonably recent thing for you. I know you run marathons as well as doing Ironman activities. But what is it about this form of competitive exercise, do you think? For
Yeah.
you? Because in your work life, your professional life, the legal world is a highly competitive world as well. The mindset, I guess, there must be crossover in some
Yeah,
way,
I mean,
maybe.
what I should just clarify is that I've only done a half Ironman, but I've done a lot more of
You're an
the
Iron Man to me, I'll tell you that
Thank you very much. What I've done a lot more of is a lot more marathons.
Yeah. You're just back from New York. You just done the New York Marathon, is that right?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that was the fifth of the world majors, and I've just got
Right.
what's called Boston left before
Okay.
becoming what's known as a 6-star finisher.
Got it.
Um, and yeah, I think it's really interesting. So a lot of people don't really see how those two things kind of overlap. But I think training for an endurance event, whether it's a marathon, whether it's a half marathon or a triathlon, etc.,
Mm.
even an ultra marathon, it requires consistency.
Okay.
It requires long-term planning. It requires staying calm under pressure, and when things don't go to plan. Because a lot of times, um, in virtually in all races, especially like the longer they get, a lot of things won't go to plan, and there will be hiccups and there will be pain. And really, advising CEOs or startups is kind of the same. In both worlds, you're dealing with uncertainty, you're dealing with fatigue, you're dealing with setbacks, you're making big decisions under stress, and so it's a bit of a principle of slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Mm.
There's you can run long distances and you can close deals only through strategic pacing, not panic. I mean, we often hear it just in common sayings. Life is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Businesses, right? So, if you're only focusing on short term, it usually doesn't go very well. But
Mm.
having to focus on longer term things gives you that level of consistency. So when I'm training for a marathon, it's I'm planning 16 weeks in advance
Right.
on knowing how much I'm going to be running each day, right? And so when you're advising clients on business and you've got that kind of mindset, it really takes the edge off.
It's interesting this because I'm thinking of the Iron Men and women actually who've
Absolutely.
been in this studio, and there's kind of a line you can draw between each of you, I think, and I think this applies to business as well as it does to sport or however you would term marathon and Ironman type events. Um, there's kind of you need to live it, I think, almost. There's a dedication to this, and it's about the end goal, of course it is, but it's about how you get
It's
to
the
that end
process
goal.
of that goal.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, it's the process of that, whether it's, the training regime or, making sure you get to the gym before you go to work, whatever, or the nutritional aspects. It's that kind of mindset, I think. It seems to me, at least.
100%. And I think, it's again, you're planning, um, and you're trying to control the controllables
Mm.
while understanding that there's things that are going to happen that you necessarily haven't planned for or haven't anticipated, and what are you going to do? Um, and it really kind of teaches you a great deal of resilience, because it's not comfortable to run for 26.2 miles. It's not comfortable to do these things, right? And it's also not difficult just to train for it, right?
Mm.
Because every single day you're running for an hour, 2 hours, etc. And so that level of resilience really does help you in high pressure situations that you're dealing with in day to day. Um, and so it's really interesting what you said about those that have been in the studio that have had that. In my dealings, anybody that I've met that has done these types of events, um, what I find them is that they tend to keep their cool significantly more, and
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
realize that for myself, because I mean the very first race that I did was in December 2021.
Right.
I wasn't a long distance runner before that. I wasn't like a superstar athlete in high school or anything like that. And I've seen a significant change within myself about how I can handle things now versus 5 years ago. And so I think that there is a real connection between these two things.
Well, I think there is. It's interesting that you say that. How has the Ironman, the running, the marathon, the training uh, enhanced your kind of professional life? What is it offered? Could you put that into words?
Oh, 100%. I think the biggest word for it, I would say, is resilience, because
Okay.
with endurance racing, whether it's a marathon or a cycling race or a triathlon, etc. You have to learn that discomfort, and sometimes a bit of pain is not a signal to stop. It's a signal to focus on on how things are going. You're constantly checking in with your mind and with your body. And that mindset is really invaluable to the legal world, especially in legal disputes and because when cases are escalating, when emotions are running high, when the facts are messy, when negotiations are tough,
Mm.
um, that's the time where you can be able to draw back and focus on rationality, um, to keep breathing, to move one step at a time,
Mm.
and see both a short-term goal of like we just need to take this one next step, but with the long-term vision in mind. Um, so, complex disputes and complex transactions are really like a very long race. You don't finish in the first 10K. Um, you can win and you can finish by staying resilient in the hardest moments of that time.
It's amazing what you can handle. I think many of us don't quite know what we can handle until you're really pushed, and
Yeah.
it's interesting that you get that from it. One final question for you, and I just want to look ahead a year, and we're kind of back full circle to the corporate landscape, the startup landscape. What's the biggest trend or challenge do you see looking ahead now for the UAE's corporate startup landscape?
I'd say the biggest trend is regulation and regulated industries. Things of the nature of fintech, AI,
Mm.
digital and virtual assets, health tech, etc. You know, the challenge will be compliance maturity of these companies. Startups will need to professionalize earlier than before. They need to have stronger corporate governance, better risk management, and be more transparent to their investors. The but with that, the opportunity is enormous. The UAE has been and continues to position itself really as a global hub for all businesses, and especially that sort of next generation business.
Mm.
Um, those that get the legal foundations right will be able to scale faster and attract international capital, I think.
Okay. So, essential legal blueprints for startups and the evolving regulatory framework for digital assets in the UAE that's kind of the topic today. I have a way of kind of trying to boil everything down. I called it legal stuff for startups. It's kind of the same thing. But I really appreciate you being here. Raymond Kisswany is a partner at Davidson Co, the law firm. He is the head of the firm's international trade, digital assets, and startups practices. Raymond, love talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really
Pleasure.
appreciate it. It is Mira, Business FM. This is The Morning Drive.